Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the top 10 best or greatest moments in the Scream franchise. Now I did talk about the worst moments in the Scream franchise, and after doing the worst moments I thought to myself, even though I don't like the Scream franchise as much as I do the Halloween franchise, it kind of chops and changes, there hasn't been that many bad moments in the Scream franchise, so I thought it was only fitting to do the top 10 best moments. And at number 10 is Cece's scene in Scream 2. That sounds quite hard to say, Cece's scene. When I first seen this movie, I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer at the time, so when I saw that Sarah Michelle Gellar was in this film, I knew she wasn't going to have a big part, but when I saw her, I thought she was great, and this scene in particular was one of the best, because it was a great build-up to Ghostface revealing himself or herself to be the killer, and then chasing Cece around the house. It did feel a little bit like the beginning of Scream 1, with Drew Barrymore as Casey Becker. Because we've got a famous actress, she doesn't last too long in it. Her first name begins with C. So there's just something about that scene that's very reminiscent of Scream 1 at the start. So yeah, I think the scene was great. The build-up was great to the kill. Her talking back and forward with Ghostface, thinking it's her drunk boyfriend, is great. I just love the suspense leading up to when she finds out it's Ghostface, and then he chases her, stabs her quite brutally in the back and throws her off the balcony as well for good measure. So it's a great kill as well, mixed in with a great moment.
You teach a class about slashers and you still walked into a dark alley alone.
And at number 9 is Laura's death and the Ghostface reveal at the beginning of Scream 6. Now when you look at Samara Weaving, for me anyway, she's a very likeable actress. Everything that she's in, she's adorable, she's amazing, whether she's a good guy or a bad guy. There's just something about her, and there's something about her screen presence that just makes me want to see her more and more. She's that good. So when she's in Scream 6, I knew she was going to be the opening kill, but she ate up the whole scene that she was in. She was absolutely amazing. One of the best characters in the movie. That's how not bad the film was, but that's how much it shows that Samara Weaving could have been a bigger star in this movie. I think if they gave her a different role, maybe I would have felt differently about the movie. But then when she gets killed, we're revealed to the audience that Jason is the Ghostface killer. Now I know that we don't get to know the Ghostface killer throughout the rest of the movie because that one's short-lived because Jason does die, but it does give us the thought that what if the audience knew who the killer was and the cast that didn't know? That would give us the edge over the characters for the first time ever, knowing who the killer was. So when we see the killer sitting as a civilian with the other characters, we would be like, they're the killer and they don't even know it. It would add a different dimension to the Scream movies. Obviously it wasn't to be, but it's still a good idea, and that's why this is in the top 10. And at number 8 is Dewey's death in Scream 5. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, didn't you put Dewey's death in your bottom or your top 10 worst moments? Yes, I did in a roundabout way. It was basically because of Amber, but I'm putting it in the top 10 best moments as well because they just showed in Scream 5 that they had the balls to kill off a main and legacy character, and who better than to kill off than Dewey, because Dewey is one of the favourites that was left at the time in the franchise. Now this moment in time in the movie, we didn't know that Amber was the killer, so when he was killed, at that point I was very sad that he died. I had a tear in my eye as well. And I thought, wow, they killed off a legacy character. That has balls. I can't wait to see who it was that killed him, because whoever killed him is going to be an epic killer. Turned out it wasn't. It was Amber. But at that moment in time, that was an epic moment in the Scream franchise and one of the best moments. That's why it has to be on the list. And at number 7 is Jill's self-harming in Scream 4. Now, I thought it was absolutely nuts when she became, or we found out she was the killer. In the lead up to her being the killer, I didn't think she could pull it off as being one of the killers, so I never really suspected Jill as being one of the killers. And then when she was revealed as the killer, I was very disappointed at that moment. I was like, oh, why did you have to make her the killer? She's not really good as the killer. But after she revealed herself as being the killer, she just flipped. I know that you can flip, like Dermot Mulroney's character, Bailey. When he flipped, it was forced and really cringy. But when Jill Roberts done it, it was believable. And I was like, wow, she is actually crazy. I genuinely believe that her character could now be one of the Ghostface killers, so that montage of her self-harming herself was absolutely epic.
Do you think I made it inside your house before you could rearm?
In at number 6 is Tara's fight with Ghostface at the beginning of Scream 5. You have to remember that Scream 5 came out in 2022, January 22, so it was already been 11 years since the last time we saw a Scream movie. So when I went to see it at the cinema and we got to watch that scene, the very first time Ghostface came back in 11 years, I was blown away. And the acting was great, obviously, from Jenna Ortega, and the film just felt like at the time it had bigger stakes than it's ever had since Scream 1, and it was brutal as well. Even though it's got a 15 rating in the UK, it felt more brutal. You felt every kick, every punch, every stab. And it obviously helped that Tara survived at the beginning, the very first of any Scream movie. But it was just a great scene. It looked like it was a massively bigger budget than any of the other Scream movies, and it wasn't. But it did feel like a big budget Scream movie, and that scene really paid off. I think also Roger Jackson had his time to shine because he got more dialogue in this film, and especially at the beginning, than he did in any other Scream movie as well. He sounded like a normal guy to begin with, and then he changed his voice slightly to sound more and more every moment to sound like Ghostface until he was revealed as being the Ghostface killer on the phone to Tara. And it did help that meta moment where they're talking about the stab movies. It was genius.
I'm getting another beer. You want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back.
And at number 5 is Randy's rules to survive a horror movie in Scream 1. Now that is one of the most memorable moments in the entire franchise, when Randy stands up at the TV and tells everyone the rules of surviving a horror movie, and then you've got Stu at the end saying, I'm getting another beer, you want one? He's like, yeah, sure, I'll be right back. You can recite the lines to that exact scene word for word. I think anyone can do that. If you've seen Scream as many times as I have, you certainly can, because I used to watch Scream every single day as a teenager, and I'm not kidding, I literally put that VHS on every single day, and I couldn't wait till it got to that moment, because we couldn't really fast forward, we had to physically fast forward, and I couldn't wait till it got to that moment where Randy stands up and tells us the rules to survive a horror movie. And to me, those rules stood true, even though they weren't really true. I said to myself, right, okay, I have to look out for that in all the other horror movies. So since that moment of seeing that scene, I watched horror movies a different way, and I think people made, and production companies made horror movies differently based on Randy's rules. That's how big an impact his rules had. Even though the rules didn't really make sense, the rules had an impact, not just with us, not just with the movie, but future movies and the rules for those.
Manson, Bundy, OJ,
And at number 4 is Randy's death scene in Scream 2. Yes, it was sad to see Randy go, but at the time, they had balls to do it, just like they did with Dewey in Scream 5. They had the balls to kill off a main character, a favourite character, midway through Scream 2, but I didn't see it coming. It was sad to see him go, but it was an epic way for him to leave. And I'm glad before he died, I'm glad he got to talk to Ghostface. I always wanted Randy to talk to Ghostface. That was something that I always wanted them to do in Scream 2, and we finally got that because I knew that Randy could give it back. Well, you've got Ghostface talking to people, and he always seems like he's got the upper hand on all his victims. But when he's talking to Randy, even though they killed Randy, Randy always felt like he had the upper hand on Ghostface during that scene. When he's saying, what's your favourite scary movie? Randy's saying,
Showgirls. Absolutely frightening.
so he's been very cheeky. He knows what he's talking about. It's basically the king of horror versus a killer. So it was a great epic moment for Randy just before he died.
What? Annika, you have to move right now! You have to move! No!
And at number 3 is the ladder scene from Scream 6. Somebody told me, before I tell you why, somebody told me that, oh, it's obvious you're not going to have any scenes from Scream 6 on your list because you hate Scream 6. I don't know why people keep saying this. I've never once said I hate Scream 6. I like Scream 6. I gave it a good review. There's nowhere I've said I hate Scream 6. I think it's because I'm not saying it's the best movie ever made, then people automatically assume I don't like it. That's not how you review movies, guys. You can like a movie, and that's it. And I did like Scream 6. And yes, this is the second scene that's on my list for Scream 6. So it just goes to show that even though I don't love the movie, there are some scenes in Scream 6 that are worthy to be on this list. and the ladder scene is one of those. Now, my biggest issue with Scream 6 is the dialogue. And there's not a lot of dialogue in this scene. I think maybe that's what makes this scene really good. There's a lot of really good scenes throughout Scream 6, very intense build-ups to these scenes, and the ladder scene is probably the best out of them all. And it was a horrible situation to be in for the characters, just having to climb across from building to building in New York. And the sheer pressure of Ghostface being behind you, trying to get in, is bad enough. But then when you see a loved one being mortally wounded, she's one of the ones that died through the wounds, she's trying to get across and they notice that Ghostface is just behind her. It's quite a haunting scene because I really liked that character, Annika. I thought she was really good. And the way she died was horrendous as well. So the whole scene was great. The suspense of the scene, the music, the score. Well, the music is the score. Ghostface was just amazing in this scene. Everything about it was really good. So yes, there are great scenes in Scream 6, and this is one of them.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
No, Billy!
And at number 2 is when Billy is revealed as being the killer in Scream 1. Now, I don't know about you guys, but all the way through the movie, I thought, Billy's a killer, Billy's a killer. And then it turns out he's not the killer at some point, and we're like, oh man, I really thought it was Billy. When he was standing in Sydney's room and his phone falls out his pocket, we're like, okay, they're making it a little bit too obvious that Billy's the killer. What's happening here? And then he gets let go, and then he's the hero. He's saying, oh, Sydney, I'm going to save you. And then he gets killed by Ghostface. And at this point, we're like, okay, I was wrong. Billy's not the killer. But then when he survives these stabs, and we're like, oh, Billy's alive, come on, let's get behind Billy this time. This is the first time in the whole entire movie I don't think Billy's the killer. Let's get behind him and Sydney to survive this. It has to be. And then when he turns around and shoots Randy, and we're like, why did you do that? It took me a minute to really process why he done that. And I'm like, oh, Billy is the killer, so why is he getting stabbed? And then when he's like, corn syrup, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I got goosebumps, chills, everything at that scene. I was like, wow, I did not see that coming. I thought it was coming until the moment where I didn't think it was coming. And then we got blown away by the fact that, yes, we were right all along. Billy was the killer, or at least one of the killers in the movie. Great scene.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
And then number 1 is that dialogue between Ghostface and Casey Becker at the beginning of Scream 1. And most importantly, and in particular, that scene where he says,
I want to know who I'm looking at.
sometimes dialogue can be more powerful than actions in any type of movie, and especially horror films. And I think that scene in particular and those words that he said was absolutely chilling. Now, you might be disappointed in my number 1. I know there's a lot of scenes that I've maybe missed out, and a lot of scenes that you think are a lot better than that. But for me personally, those words that Ghostface says to Casey Becker is absolutely chilling. It's haunting. It makes, if that happened to me and somebody says, I want to know who I'm looking at, and they said it in a playful yet accidental way, I would break down. I would be like, oh my God, are you here? Who are you? What's happening? It would be such a mystery to me, as I can't even put it into words, guys. That is just something that I just wouldn't want to hear in real life. If I was a teenage girl, of course, myself on a farm, I just think that scene itself, I know there's a lot of dialogue in Scream 1 that's great, a lot of things that happen in Scream 1, a lot of things that happen in other Scream movies that are really great, that didn't quite make the list, or even the ones that did make the list. There's just something about those scenes compared to this scene, and those words in particular, that is very haunting. And I think that the build-up of that moment was great as well, because we thought we're having a nice chilled back and forward between characters, between Ghostface and between Casey. Like, oh, everything's going really nice for Casey, of course, and she doesn't realise what's happening. She's maybe just thinking the guys want to flirt with her, which is what it sounded like. And then when he hit that bombshell, those words that he said, she's just like, what the fuck? And even you can see it in her face as well. She's like, what did you just say? And then when he starts lying about it, and then it leads on to him building up to being the killer, and then killing her. It's just an epic moment. Obviously, of course, the whole scene itself is probably the best beginning to any horror movie, or at least one of the best beginnings. But those words to me are absolutely chilling, and that's why that is my number 1. So what are your thoughts on that, guys? Just like the Halloween franchise, there's a lot of great moments in the Scream franchise, and that's just my top 10 You might not agree with it, you might agree with some of them, but let me know your list down below. If you can't name 10, like I've said before, just name a couple of scenes that you think are the best and leave them down below and we can get discussing on it. Anyway guys, thanks a lot for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara. Ever played Skin the Cat?
Someone's in the back!